most respected audience, friends, comrades, and my dear students. A very good day to you all. After listening to my lecture on Professor Tyagarajan, many had inquired about the person who has spoken on the teacher. I am Vinod Vincent Rajesh, who is not only Deputy Area Commander of Tamil Nadu Home Guard Tirunelveli District, but also I have served as Principal of Govindaperi Mano College, and I am a regular faculty member of Manonmaniam Sundarnar University, completing around 20 years of service. And I proudly call myself as a student of history. Since I have introduced myself as Deputy Area Commander of Tamil Nadu Home Guard, I wish to record my first statement deriving from my experience in the organization. We have a person by name Sadagopan. Actually, Mr. Sadagopan is also known as Sadagopan Ambi, and he is a very famous playback singer, and he organizes several orchestras across the state. When I was mentioning to him that I am a student of some person of great musical merit, he gave me an information stating that there were two people who were appearing for the 8th grade piano test, and one is Ilayaraja, the much celebrated musical maestro, and another is a person belonging to the city of Tirunelveli. But the another person passed with flying colors, he said, and he was mentioning about none other than Professor Cleophus. What he has mentioned might be a folklore, but such an image he has in the field of music. That is what we should understand. The purpose of my talk about people like Professor Cleophas and Tyagarajan is because when we go for Google search, we do not find any information about such people who have walked among us with great might, and we could not in the future see persons of this kind, and therefore the general public and the future generation should know about people like Professor Tyagarajan, Professor Cleophas, and others. As far as Professor Cleophas is concerned, we could conduct a full-fledged research on his contribution and understanding of music, and therefore I recommended a student to write a MA project on Professor Cleophas, and she collected information pertaining to the professor, and she named her MA project as Isai Narambugalin Maindan. Since Professor Cleophas is mostly engaged with stringed instruments, she preferred to name her project as such. Many information pertaining to Professor Cleophas we did not come to know when he was alive, and this project and several other folklore shed light on his life and contributions. His father was a professor at St. Xavier's College of Education, and my beloved teacher, Professor M.X. Miranda, often used to mention about Professor Cleophas's father, and later Professor Cleophas, when he was studying at Loyola College, was the student of Professor M.X. Miranda. Earlier, teachers of history department, they used to teach papers like social history of England and history of English literature to the students of English literature, and therefore Professor M.X. Miranda, being a history teacher, taught Professor Cleophas at Loyola College, and Professor Miranda often used to remember his personal visits to Professor Cleophas's home. My student in her project Isai Narambugalin Maindan states that his father, that is Professor Cleophas's father, sold a huge sum of land to buy a piano for his enthusiastic son, and Professor Cleophas constantly encouraged enthusiastic parents to buy firstly a musical equipment for their children if at all they wish to have a musical mindset. Personally, I came to know about Professor Cleophas through a friend by name Mr. George. Mr. George is presently working for the Ministry of Defense in the clerical cadre at Trichy. He is involved in church choir and therefore he has come to know Professor Cleophas through some musical programs conducted through the church, particularly the Church of South India. When I was about to join St. Xavier's College English department, George said that you will be having a professor by name Cleophas who is a genius in music, yet he is also a master in teaching English language. The substantial presence of Christianity in the region is thought to have contributed for the development of education, particularly through English medium and also music through church choirs. People of other districts see Tirunelveli district in such a manner. But however, such a kind of musical tradition is not widely found in the district. However, if we are to represent somebody to fulfill the expectation of people of other districts, we can take Professor Cleophas as a typical example. I met Professor Cleophas in the year 1994 and he visited the college either by his ambassador car or Enfield motorcycle. The manner and style with which he drove these vehicles depicted him as a police officer than a professor. Getting down from the vehicle for the shape of his body, he walked like a wrestler, and a person who is not introduced to him would think that he is very rough and tough in character, but in fact he is very soft-hearted person. While making conversations, he never applied authoritative overtones. Rather, he preferred to speak with honorific plural to even the freshers. When we closely associate ourselves with Professor Cleophas, we would come to know that he is above class, caste, and religious boundaries. Hindu Dharmashastras have classified that for certain kind of people, caste and religious barriers could not apply, and it includes teachers also. But in the case of Professor Cleophas, he is not only an English teacher but also a teacher of music and a star performer whose capability only genius could understand, and therefore his experience is reflected in his character. In the introductory class, Professor Cleophas often used to say that you should try to understand language like a baby. Mothers do not teach their baby grammar or pronunciation. Through observation and constant practice, babies tend to acquire a command over language. Similarly, you have to practice and you have to observe and move on. However, if assigned, he taught grammar with great expertise. And Professor Victor's brother, who used to sell t-shirts, he once said that I have never seen a person expert in teaching grammar like Professor Cleophas. I have personally observed that Professor Cleophas had a very strong command over vocabulary. He mentioned the name of one of his teachers and said that he used to give meaning of one word in several ways, and he also adopted such method, and he had a very good vocabulary, and he inspired students by employing that in classroom. He was very objective in evaluating the test papers. Once four of us wrote a test for a small competition in our department, and among the four I am very close to Professor Cleophas, but after correcting the papers he marked me fourth rank. His assessment encouraged me because I understood that I have to work a lot and improve. He was always willing to help the students and encourage their development. As I have already mentioned in yet another lecture, Once he donated 100 rupees for installing a ceiling fan in our department. Actually, nobody demanded it from him, but he volunteered and gave that money. Similarly, I wish to call him soft hearted because of one instance. Once I was about to perform a karate program in St. Xavier's College, and that program involved making a car passing over my body. I requested Professor Cleophus to give his car and personally drive it. But Professor Cleophus he came forward to give the car, but he said he could not drive it because he cannot bear the stress of making it drive over a human body. Therefore, he said that one of my nephews he is a strong willed man and I will call him to drive the car. Similarly, unforgettable is his traveling with us during a tour program. He had a very tight schedule, and midway he left us to participate in a musical program. And he said that he will be leaving midway earlier when the program was arranged. He constantly traveled widely, and we were wondering how he managed to conduct classes and conduct musical training programs, so on and so forth. Coming back to the tour program, the first and foremost instruction for us pertaining to the tour program is to produce the identity card. In my case, I always carried the identity card wherever I moved, but I could not understand how I missed my identity card during the tour program. And I have heard that if one person is not having the identity card, the entire team will be severely fined. I did not want my team members to be fined, and therefore I did not spend any of my money, and I am traveling with a fearful mind. Professor Cleophus has observed that, and he came to me and said that, Thambi, do not worry, enjoy. If at all you need more money, kindly do not hesitate to ask me. Actually, Professor Cleophas did not know what is disturbing me in my mind. But somehow he read my mind and understood that I am disturbed and made best attempts to cheer me up. During the tour program, he exposed his sense of humor and cracked a lot many jokes and entertained all of us. My doubt is about a cinema star who performed piano playing in a song. In a movie Pudhiya Paravai, Shivaji Ganeshan used to play piano, and I asked whether his body language is correct or not, as well as the movement of his fingers. Professor Cleophus said that cinema stars they used to observe the playing pattern of musicians and they manage in an agreeable manner. In fact, Professor Cleophas, with his stout body and chubby face, had looks like Shivaji Ganesan himself, but for his baldness. When it comes for his musical life, he has underwent 18 years of training under an European sister, and she lived in the Ignatius convent for a very long time. And when she left, she surrendered the piano to Professor Cleophas. Professor Cleophas must have produced a lot many genius minds in the field of music. But again, a folklore states that popular film music director Mr. Vijay Antony underwent training with Professor Cleophas. Mr. Richard, one of my student friends who studied in the Department of English of Manonmaniam Sundarnar University, he gave this information. He also gave another information wherein he stated that Professor Cleophas played piano in a shopping mall at the United States of America, and it was noted by a huge crowd, and the local newspaper reported it as that an Indian played a piano like never before. As a teacher of English, his accomplishment in the field of music never entered and sat in his shoulders. He was a sincere and dedicated teacher. He did not wish to compromise his talent for the sake of money. This is one of the characteristics which we find in great genius. They never sell their talents. He often used to say that when he was a young man, some missionary organization came forward to accommodate him in a post of a director or equivalent position with a huge salary. But he was expected to give one promise which will make him close to spiritual life. That is, he has to give up smoking. Professor Cleophus used to say that I can give up smoking easily, but that is an injury causing to myself, and it has nothing to do with spirituality or God, and therefore he declined such offers. So, a son of a professor, a musical genius who had offers at his gate and a postgraduate qualification from Loyola College, etc., would project Professor Cleophas as a wealthy man. In spite of being very close to him, until last, I also thought like that. But on the day of his death, I happened to travel with one of his sisters in a car wherein Professor Dr. Rosary Mary also traveled. And his sister said that our father left us before some of us getting married. And Professor Cleophas strove hard and he saved money and compromised on his expenses and got us all married. She said that he used to cut the torn up collars of his shirt and he used to stitch it in the opposite side, and he used such shirts despite severe damage. Narrating of such events with class students would have made emotionally close bondage with him, but why he did not resort to that? At this place, I wish to narrate a small story mentioned to me by Mr. Puranendu Bakshi, one of the known scholars in French literature. As per the narration of Puranendu Bakshi, one day Beethoven and Goethe were walking together. At that time, the king appeared in front of them. Goethe bowed his body and wished the king, but Beethoven avoided that. After the king leaving them, Beethoven asked why you bowed in front of the king. For that, Goethe said, he is the king of the land, he is our lord with a lot of power. Beethoven was irritated and he said that, so what? You are Goethe, you are a creator, and he will die one day and he will perish. You will not. Same here, he was Cleophas. By all means, he did not make any ties with any organization or any human being except his family members. Throughout, he was an independent man. He was a kind of a king, and nothing controlled him, and he yielded to nobody. He had his own way of living in this world, and his students saw him as a role model in evolving a cosmopolitan mind. As in the case of Professor Tyagarajan, Professor Cleophas also did not wish to study more than MA, but his talent in the field of English literature was sufficient enough to fulfill the requirements and expectation of the most brilliant student who visited St. Xavier's College at that time. And there were several brilliant minds at that time in St. Xavier's College, and it was a factory of producing students of eminence. As Professor Tyagarajan used to say that if you give us a donkey, we will make a horse out of it and send it out, and one such horse is myself. No doubt, as in the case of Professor Tyagarajan, Professor Cleophas also could be awarded 10 PhDs for his efficiency not only in language but also in the field of music. However, he should have taken good care of his health, which he least bothered to worry, and therefore he left us all very early. With this brief introduction to Professor Cleophus, I conclude my talk. Thank you very much for your patient listening. Jai Hind.